All right, everybody, this is John, and tonight I want to talk about the best way to see if the market is about to have a pullback. Because right now, all the stock markets are actually doing fantastic. Thank you very much. But there are a couple things on the horizon that start pointing to the idea that we could have a pullback into a key support level to buy. And so it's always important to understand, it's like, when you're looking for kind of something like this, it's not that the markets are going to like top out and die. It's just that at some point, the markets naturally ebb and flow. And at some point, they got to stop flowing and ebb a little bit. And the biggest mistake I've seen traders make is that they finally get excited like at the last minute and decide to buy just at the end of the ebb. And then they sit there or at the end of the flow. And then as the market kind of ebbs back to rising support, they all get stopped out. All right. So what are the things that we want to look at in those situations to try to avoid that or be prepared for it to understand what's going on? So the first thing that, at least in this environment, you want to look at is Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now is, so we had a nice high here. Then we made a double top. And you can see this is probably the worst divergence I've ever seen in my life. So you retested the highs and then like momentum was negative, right? So that's a huge red flag. Now, when I say I'm harping here on Bitcoin, I don't mean like, oh my God, Bitcoin is dead. Obviously, I'm not saying that. Everything needs to take a breather. Everything needs a timeout, coach. I need to go sit on the bench. I need to relax. I need to recover. And that's what Bitcoin is doing here. So in trading this, one of the things that I watch at is just something as simple as this is the kind of the 21 period moving average, exponential moving average. This is plus 1 ATR, plus 2 ATR, plus 3 ATR. And then down here you have minus 1 ATR, minus 2 ATR, and minus 3 ATR. What is ATR? ATR is just average true range. And typically in a market, if you get plus 2 ATR or minus 2 ATR away from the 21 period moving average, then you kind of ebb your way back to the 21 period moving average. Okay, so that's the first part of this. And then the second part of this is when you're trying to look for, I talk about ebb and flow. Okay, so this is flow. The money's flowing and then it just kind of ebbs and it flows, right? So, but that can change. So right now the flow is to the downside and then the ebb, the retracement, is and back to the 21 EMA. So when I see this kind of a pattern, what I'm looking for is the next flow to the downside. Okay, so that's just for Bitcoin. So in the short term, again, I'm talking about the short term, long term. I love Bitcoin. Everybody freaks out when I get bearish, a short term bearish trade on Bitcoin, but nothing goes straight up every day, right? So one way to trade this is with IBIT, and this is one right here where you can see we came up to the 21 EMA today. We took out the prior day's low, and at this point, what I'm looking for is that we could get to minus 3 ATR here on the daily chart. That's 59.26, possibly the 200 SMA, okay? So what does that mean for stocks? Well, if we look at, like, say, the QQQ has been on fire, right? Well, a lot of times, Bitcoin, whatever Bitcoin does first, the stock market follows later. Okay, so when I see something like that, even though the stock market now looks great, Google looks awesome, Amazon looks awesome, Goldman Sachs, new all-time highs today, Meta looks awesome, Tesla looks great, but not all stocks are participating. There's a lot of stocks not doing a whole lot. There's a handful of stocks that are doing awesome, and then the stock market in general, as we've seen, is drifting up and up and up. Now, if we say that the stock market is going to drift up every single day for the rest of our lives, of course, we'd be laughed out of the room. And what we want to kind of understand is that while we don't want to fight the trend, we want to look for signs and see that, okay, this trend may be, the flow of this trend may be pausing, and then we're just going to have kind of that ebb, and that's just the way, the retracement. Okay, so what would I look for then in the cues for that to possibly, just to signal that that is underway? Okay, because we don't want to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to short it right here. So typically on something like this, let's zoom in on here. Just as we're talking about that 21 period EMA on Bitcoin, what I look for on the stock market is essentially I need to see 2 days in a row where we get closes below the 21 EMA. So as you can see right now, we ain't there yet, right? But if we can get a close below the 21 EMA followed by a lower close, then that typically will see a couple of weeks worth of money flow outside of the market, all right? So first of all, is that happening right now? No. Is that happening with Bitcoin? Yes. a lot of times do things happen in Bitcoin before they happen in the stock market? Yes. Okay. Bitcoin is a kind of a leading indicator in terms of it being the front lines of being a risk on or a risk off asset. So that's why I look at this. It's like, okay, so preparing for. So the other thing that's interesting on this is that coming up on September 19th through the 22nd, this is an important cycle date that's coming up. Now, this works one of two ways. Either if we rally, and we could just rally into this level, okay? So if we rally into the 19th and 22nd, then you look for that to be a cycle high, and then from there we actually get a pretty decent sell-off. Like the high here could be in place for a couple months. On the other hand, if we start to, over the next couple days, start to fumble around here and then sell off into the 19th to the 22nd, then that becomes a great point to buy and then for us to launch higher. So the reason I'm bringing up all this is that I'm looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's already kind of leading the way lower. So that makes me kind of look at the markets like, all right, this thing now, with Bitcoin going first, then this next cycle date coming up on the 19th to the 22nd, today's the 9th, so that's 10 trading days from now to start with. That could be an interesting trade, okay? So like I said, there's no signals yet. This is coming up. I've seen this pattern happen many, many, many times, and this is a way to kind of look at it and not be kind of caught off guard. The other thing that I think has been super interesting in this market is if we look at, say, TLT. TLT has finally popped up, and of course, what does that mean? That means that interest rates here are coming down. Now, at first you might think, well, that should be good for stocks, right? Well, the stock market is really, really good about pricing this stuff in well in advance. Like it knows, it knows, right? It's not like, oh my God, I can't believe interest rates are coming down. Like the stock market's pretty smart about this. What I think is interesting on something like this though, is that an ancillary market, like the real estate market, which, I don't know where you live in the US, I'm in Texas. I got friends all over the place. A lot of the real estate market's kind of slow. And I do think, though, that if we can get these rates below 4%, so the 10-year, the 30-year mortgage is basically this number. So in this case, almost 4.1%. And then the banks add on their spread, typically 2 or 3%. And that gives us the mortgage. If we can get below 4%, say to 3.8%, you get some banks out there adding 2%, that's 5.8%. Suddenly you got 5.8% mortgages. That's something that could actually spur a little bit of activity there. So a couple of things like that, where you can look at Bitcoin as not only kind of a precursor to potentially, kind of leading the market by the nose, so to speak. And again, what I'd be looking for is if we could sell off into the 19th, 20th, 19th through 22nd, if we could plunge into that, that'd be a great time to buy. So if you're a longer term trader and we sell off into that, you just add your positions, right? You don't freak out. You just add your positions. If you're shorter term, you look for sell signals in the stock market. Do we have any right now? No, right? Not in the key stocks. So I'd look for that break of the 21 EMA. And then from there, we can look and see if we can flush into that level. Meanwhile, if this all pans out, that we come down and we get interest rates below 4%, and that kind of happens as we get into the 19th, the 19th through 22nd of September, not only then could we get this great turnaround in the stock market, but then we could also see essentially residential real estate picking up and essentially, asset prices going a little crazy into the end of the year. All right. Anyway, good stuff. Never dull in the markets. You guys have a great night. See you at the next update.
Hey, John here with Simpler Trading. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, comment down below and let us know what topic you want to see us cover next. Also, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you can get notified when we release new videos. And if you want to watch us trade in real time using our own money, go to simplertrading.com and learn how to sign up. Good trading, and we'll see you next time.